Welcome back to the Budget Gamer channel, where we bring you critical and in-depth reviews of just about every indie game we can get our hands on, and today we're going to be taking a look at Arrest of a Stone Buddha for the Nintendo Switch. And when I heard that this game was actually from the same team as the Friends of Ringo Ishikawa, I was really excited to dive in. But the emphasis needs to be on was. But we'll get to that in a second. First off, we're going to start out with the story. Upon immediately starting the game, we have to select a date on a calendar, and unless you play all the way to the end, or at least mostly all the way to the end, you probably won't understand the impact of that scene. So we'll forget about that for now, you'll figure it out on your own later, and we're going to start off with where the gameplay actually starts. Initially, we take over our main character as he walks through the halls of a cathedral and up behind a man kneeling down in front of the altar. And with the only action available to you being drawing your weapon and putting a bullet in the back of his head, the gameplay starts out with all-out horde-style gunfights and combat. And this is essentially 50% of Arrest of a Stone Buddha. You'll carry a firearm that quickly becomes useless as ammo in the game is very limited. But you'll also be able to quickly snap the arm of an enemy, taking their weapon to use it to keep on firing through the crowds. Enemies in the game do come on in horde-style wave combat. They are ceaseless and will just continue to go until you make it to the end of the level. And as you take a couple steps forward from the opening screen in any level, they'll start not only coming from the path ahead of you, but coming up from behind. The enemies that you'll be facing will have 3 different types of weapons: pistols, shotguns, and rifles. And given your skills as a mercenary assassin, you can single or dual wield pistols as well as snatch the occasional shotgun to start clearing masses of enemies with each shot instead of popping them off delicately one at a time. You may be able to take the rifles, but as the riflemen stop the edge of the screen, I've never actually been able to get up close enough to try and snatch one. Other than that, as briefly hinted at before, enemies do die in one shot. And despite not having a health bar, I think you can take 3 or 4 shots, possibly depending on what you're getting hit with. So you do have a bit of HP, even though you'll have to keep track of that on your own. Pistols have a handful of rounds, shotguns only have 3 or 4, and again, I've never snatched a rifle, so I really don't know. But other than that, one combat dynamic to keep in the back of your mind is that you'll only be able to shoot the enemy that's closest to you. Or at least that is the case for the casual standing position. You can crouch and fire as well, and while that'll take out the enemy closest to you, if anyone has drawn a weapon, it'll focus on them first. So if you've got 4 or 5 guys rushing you, but there's a rifleman in the back, you'll definitely want to take him down before engaging with the rest of the enemies. But while this incredibly intense gunplay is pretty exciting and puts a real big strain on the intensity of the game, the combat half of the game is actually only about half of the game. If you've played games like Hotline Miami or a couple other ones, you know that they have intense combat switched out with some more mundane, just run-of-the-mill daily life. And as our main character is an assassin for hire, there's some gaps between jobs. And so after finishing a mission, you can kind of aimlessly meander through the city at your leisure for a few days, picking up prescriptions to help fight your insomnia, watching a video, maybe talking to somebody, or buying a trench coat at a clothing store. But really, whatever it is that you do is completely up to you. But whatever you do, it'll take about 2 or 3 days before you'll be approached by your agent and given a new mission. These interactions generally deal with certain veiled themes and talk about post-traumatic stress disorder as well as certain events from a previous war experience. And as you may guess, walking in the shoes of a nihilistic assassin for hire, a lot of the social engagements through the gameplay and even talking to your agent aren't really that engaging. Moving on to the visuals of Arrest of a Stone Buddha, it's obviously pretty low pixel count, but really well done as far as the scenes are concerned. There are a few stunning vistas if you walk around the city at the right time of day, and though there's not much to do, there actually is a fair bit to explore. The music though, the music is well paired with the combat and it's probably one of the highlights of the game. It is intense and it rises and falls at exactly the right points to nurture that anxiety and tension in those fight scenes. But with the general mechanics and the audio and visuals pushed aside, it's time to talk about some of their critiques. Coming from the same dev team as the Friends of Ringo Ishikawa, I expected a lot from the game. I did expect it to be a bit somber and have a really dark story to tell. Playing as an assassin and walking through the city with really no story to push further, I was expecting the nihilistic perspective of our main character to reveal this kind of darker side of life. But despite obviously having a story to tell, it's really hard to tell what it is. Except that maybe life is mundane and you just kind of live it. Other than that, one of the bigger critiques of the game is its split between fast-paced adrenaline rush intensity and completely nothing to do. The 2 or 3 day wait periods that you have can be slept through if you buy sleeping pills, but otherwise it's a legitimate real-world half hour before you're given a new mission. Then you'll have to just walk around and try and make time go faster. In the missions themselves though, the combat also has a few hang-ups. You can't walk and shoot, which really isn't great for trying to push your way through to the end of a setting. But the biggest issue is that certain environmental aspects block you as the player from being able to see what's going on. And that, coupled with the fact that even off-screen enemies can shoot you and cause you to start the level over, it turns what could be considered a really exciting and fast-paced combat scenario into a really aggravating slog to the end. But looking back on my complete experience with Arrest of a Stone Buddha, there was something to it. There was some intrinsic value into trying to figure out what the story of the developer is. But all in all, with the imbalance, with no ammo counts, with the constant horde-style rushes of enemies, with no HP bar, and with absolutely nothing to do in the forced settings outside of combat, the total gameplay felt just kind of imbalanced and really lacking. And if you've been around the channel for any length of time, you know that I hate posting negative reviews. But as this is a pretty simple and straightforward game, that really is about all there is to talk about. And so that does about wrap up the review of Arrest of a Stone Buddha now on the Nintendo Switch. So if you were interested in the game and you found the review and you liked it, or especially if you found it helpful, feel free to throw us a like or a comment to show your support. And if you've already played the game, I would love to know your feedback. But don't forget to click that little bell icon when you subscribe to stay updated with the latest content, because we are putting out 2 new game reviews every single week, and whether it's an easy hard pass or an absolute unforgettable gem, chances are if it's on the eShop, you're going to find it right here. But if you like what we do, if you love what we do, which is providing some much needed media coverage to a lot of these underrepresented indie titles and indie development teams, I'd be more than happy to welcome you into our crew of Patreons. They not only help me actually purchase the games, but help me develop the content, and they also get advanced access to every single game review well before it gets published on YouTube. But anyway, this has been The Budget Gamer, so as always, thanks for watching.